Morgan Ortagus from SiriusXM. You all know her. She's a former. She had the best job title I think in American politics, and it is spokesperson for the United States of America under Secretary Pompeo. You know I'm going to introduce you like that every single time, Morgan, as the former spokesperson for the United States of America. I would have that so much bigger than my name. I would wear it like a billboard. And it's your daughter's birthday today. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Well, I apologize if it's really loud. I am coming to you guys live from Kid Rock's Bar in Nashville, Tennessee on Broadway. I will be Fox Nation. We're doing a big special here tonight. So we go on air in about 15 minutes on the Fox Nation app. And, doing it at Kid Rock's Bar is a fun and interesting choice. So I thought either way, we all might leave here hungover, one way or the other. Hopefully we're celebrating. I was just listening to the Georgia returns that you were talking about, Jamie, and that's pretty phenomenal. I was with the former president, Donald Trump, yesterday in Pennsylvania. I was with Eric and Lara. We were doing Women for Trump, and I got to tell you, it was bittersweet. I didn't expect it to be this way, but I will say that everybody was tearing up on the campaign, just realizing that these were the final moments that Donald Trump will be running for president again. And I really feel like the team thinks that they've laid it all out on the field. But one of, I think, the most interesting things, and I've been involved in this in Pennsylvania, is what we've done and what you were talking about in getting low propensity voters to vote early. That has been a massive focus of outside groups of the RNC, of the campaign. And it's still too early to tell, but we pray and hope that is what makes the difference, especially when you look at all of these swing states, and they're just talking about a few percentage points, thousands of votes, 40,000 votes, right? That could make the difference. The Trump campaign is banking on that effort to get out low and mid propensity voters around the nation to be the deciding factor tonight.
Well, and that's what we're looking at as well. I mean, I know that, and you and the campaign and everybody knows that Florida's been off the table for some time. But we're starting to see some results. We report really quickly in Florida because our early and mail-in ballots are counted prior to the polls closing, and so those are released immediately. So we have about 60% of our votes already counted and tabulated in some Florida counties, and I'll tell you the results are looking better, especially if tradition holds true. And what we saw today is more Republicans voted on Election Day in Florida than Democrats. So I only think the numbers we see here in Florida are going to grow. He's at about, I want to say, an 8-point lead. I haven't seen the exact results lately as they update, but I know here in Sarasota County he is trending towards a huge lead, and there's some places we want to like to look at, like Duval, that hasn't reported yet up in Jacksonville. But I know that you're saying the Kid Rock Bar, but you had a pretty good event at the national convention that was held in a pretty cool bar as well there in Milwaukee. How did that event go?
That was great. I mean, I feel like, there's been so many ups and downs on this campaign. It was just a week before our event at the convention, whenever Donald Trump was literally shot in the face. Thankfully, thank God, the angels were around him and protected him. I would say the mood was very celebratory at the RNC. And then, you went into Biden quitting, Harris coming in. They were feeling the vibes. Everybody, we felt a lot of momentum swing her way. I've definitely felt in the past 2 to 3 weeks that the momentum go back to where we were during the RNC. And I've been, just like you, Jamie, I worked my very first election cycle, 2004 and then 2006 with you in Florida. So we've known each other for a long time. And, you have a pretty good sense of where you are going into these things on election night. Anything crazy can happen. Hillary Clinton was not expecting to lose in 2016. However, I would say that when you start to just take the mood of the campaigns, it definitely, this past 3 weeks, felt like where we were in the convention, which was very celebratory. And by the way, here's just a microcosm example. I was going by to get my hair done today, of course, as ladies do, getting my highlights touched up. Well, my friend owns her hair salon here in Nashville. She is a small business owner. And she's not overly political, but she said to me, Morgan, it's just really hard to run a business in this economy. I feel like my clients don't have the money that they once had to get some of, the more expensive things done to their hair. So her business is struggling. It's hard. And she said, I'm voting for Trump because as a small business owner, I just need a better economy. She just wants her salon to make it, right? She's not asking for a lot. She wants to be able to afford her groceries and to be able to have a successful and thriving small business. And to me, that is a microcosm, a small example of what women around the country are actually voting for.
No, absolutely. And you remember Jennifer Bash, my wife, and she came to
Of
Milwaukee.
Course.
Yeah. So Jennifer, you have a question.
I do. And Morgan, I think that this is something that kind of people have lost during this whole election is, the sensitive side of Trump that nobody ever sees. And, one of the stories that I tell, and I hope you don't mind me telling this, is when you came to speak at Jamie's
Sure.
Republican Club, you talked about how he called you when your dog passed away.
Yeah.
If you
I don't mind you telling that story. Sorry, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. No, I don't mind you tell that story at all. I mean, that's just an example of who he is. He cares about people. He didn't ask me anything else about my, about my job that I was doing for him at the time, what was going on around the world. None of that. It was 5 minutes just talking about my dog. He knew I was really sad and upset, and he wanted to show that he cared about who worked for him. And that's just an example of anybody who works for him knows this side of him. Everything that you hear in the media, about him is just, I think, for the most part, from people who don't know him.
Yeah, I think it's sad. The media will never show that, and even I don't know if you remember his neighbor that spoke at the RNC, who called him the night that he got shot, after he got shot, and when Trump answered the phone, he said, I'm so sorry I haven't called you in a while. How is your family? And he was like, I'm calling to see how you are because you were just shot. And, it just, people will never see that side of him. And it's really sad because I think that would make such a huge difference for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, the more, Melania Trump had it right after Trump had the first assassination attempt. If you remember in that statement that she wrote, she talked about how people had dehumanized her husband, in their politics. And that was, I think, so incredibly powerful. If we go back and look at her statement, she's saying, wait a minute, guys, this is not just somebody who's a politician who's running for the presidency. This is my husband. This is the father of my son. And you dehumanized him to the point where these leftists were so radicalized that they were trying to take him out. And I think that the rhetoric coming out of the Democratic Party has been incredibly dangerous. And I have full confidence that the American people are going to push back on that tonight.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. And I think, there's a couple of things that I've noticed here in Florida when I'm looking at these counties. Rural voters that kind of maybe in 2020 decided to go towards Biden a little bit. And, of course, Donald Trump won those counties, but he won them by a smaller margin. He is winning them by a much larger, he won them by a larger margin in 2016. And we're seeing that larger margin return in rural voters. We're also seeing...
Seeing that, Jamie, you're seeing that in Florida?
Yes. We sure are. You look at sort of like Clay County outside of Jacksonville, which isn't necessarily a rural county, but it's we're seeing those kind of results here in Sarasota. We're seeing them. Little county like Hardy, we're seeing those rural votes kind of come back home. And so, I had predicted. I wrote a blog that Trump would win. I tried every single way I could to try to make it as fair as possible for Harris, and the best I could come up with for her was about a 6.5 point win in Florida. I think we're going to trend more towards an 8 or 9 point win. Chad's a little bit more ambitious at plus 10, but I think we're on our way. And I think my hope is that we see that's indicative of everything around the country, that rural voters return home. the urban voters have realized the flaw of the Biden-Harris regime, and we start seeing, and I hope that there maybe was some response bias in with women in polling, that they just didn't feel comfortable saying they were voting for Trump when in fact they were.
And you're the expert on Florida, Jamie. I'm looking at Carlos Jimenez's tweet, and he's saying that Trump has just won Miami-Dade. I mean, that is, when I think about 20 years ago, when I first entered politics with you, that would have been almost incomprehensible to us. I mean,
Yeah.
Florida has just changed so much.
Yeah, and and part of that's the leadership of Ron DeSantis, and we've, if you take Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward County together, you're talking about a place that's an area of the country that's more Democratic and more diverse, and the same size as the state of Maryland. And Ron DeSantis won those 3 counties in 2022, and I'm not going to go as far to say in a presidential year that Trump replicates that, but if he's won Miami-Dade, we had Chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, Evan Power, on earlier. He thinks there's a possibility that we win Palm Beach as well. We're certainly not going to win Broward, but you start to see a scenario where if and I'm not looking at the results right now, and when I looked at Broward, they were too early for me to speculate, but if we start seeing a Broward at, a loss of 150,000 or less, I think that's really indicative of what we will see throughout the country in our urban areas.
I'm sorry to run, but I'm getting caught on air, so I got to go get mic'd up. But so great to be with you, my friend, and
you're a dear friend, and thank you so much, Morgan.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night.
Thank you, Morgan.
Wow, what a powerhouse!
Absolutely.
That's some real insights. Well, I was wrong. She's on stage at Kid Rock's bar in Nashville, Tennessee. So, we kind of let the cat out of the bag. We're not just coming up with these numbers magically in our head, Chad. We're actually looking at screens. And we have about 16 states closing at the top of the hour.
So we're trying to get Joe on the line.
So what I was doing was I was looking at Georgia, but let's take a look at.
I just want to make one comment here. Cambria County, are you familiar with Cambria County, Jen, in western Pennsylvania?
Vaguely.
90% red, and there seems like there's a little chaos happening there. I don't have all the data, but it seems like there's something going out there handing out paper ballots, or it seems like in our deep red county, which is a little bit of a head scratcher. So
they're giving everybody a second chance.
I don't know. There's something coming over.
For the votes they stole.
Something's coming over the news wire.
So we have a question from Jonathan Hogue. He said, I recently heard it said that Duval County is a bellwether for the state of Georgia. Do you think this is true? And how is Trump looking in Duval?
So let's go over to Duval and see if we can get it. This is one I had some trouble with, babe. I don't know if you want to help me out here or not.
I can definitely try.
So I was here at our link. I'm on I'm in the cell, but it doesn't click. So thank you, Jonathan, for the question. I will say that I just came back from the results over in Georgia. We're looking at about almost 1.5 million voters there now, having voted, and Trump up 20 points. And so Georgia is, trending in a great direction. It's still way too early to tell.
But normally,
Duval County and number one, I don't know that Duval has been trending to a blue county for a very long time, and we're looking at almost a tie in Duval with about 400,000 votes. If you go back to the Excel, let's look and see how many votes there were in 16 and 20.
People who are not familiar with Duval, Duval is outside Metro Jacksonville.
Yeah, so in 2016, there were about 417,000 total votes there, and in 2020, there were probably right at 500,000 votes. So there's probably about another 100,000 votes to go that are election day votes, and they're virtually tied. So I think that's a good sign, because I don't think Duval is necessarily a bellwether county. I think that Duval has been trending blue. I expected to lose Duval tonight, and if Trump is tied, I don't think that that's necessarily an indicator of bad things to come. if you go next door to Clay, and
Oops, sorry.
did have that up, but that's pretty easy. We're looking at what is that? Almost a 50,000 vote. So go back to so we're looking at almost 50,000 vote win in Clay County. It looks like they're completely done recording there. Go back to the Excel, the green, and Clay County. That would replicate 2020 and actually do better than 2016. So as you know, Trump won Florida in 2016 by a point. He won by more than 3 points in 2020. So it's certainly trending more towards the bigger win here in Florida than the smaller win he had. So I see nothing there that makes me think that those are outside the, let's say put it in the area of concern, Chad. Is that fair enough to say?
Mm-hmm.
My expectation is we'll, probably see a call on Florida very quickly after 8 p.m.
So
Well,
we have
1 minute.
Oh, sorry.
So we can almost do the countdown.
Yeah.
So
Joe is not able to join. He is at a table currently. He said
That's
he'll
fine.
try to get in later. I do have a question from Amber. She would like more information on the IVF and reproductive views that Trump has. Because all the women and everybody is voting for Kamala based on that because of, they're saying that he's going to take IVF treatment away and everything like
Right.
that. So what kind of information do you have that people aren't actually hearing about?
So, Trump has said that he's not going to pass any type of national abortion ban and that he supports IVF treatments. Certainly, our U.S. Senator Rick Scott has said, in commercial after commercial, that he supports IVF treatments. And, Trump's position on abortion has been to return it to the states, not to the. So I think Chad has something he wants to say. So it's 8:00. We've closed the polls here in Florida today, and I think we've seen enough data to know that we're going to win Florida, and we beat CNN by 30 seconds there, and I'm going to say we called it even earlier. But let's put that in perspective here. Here it is, 8:01. And there's enough data in that Florida's off the table,
which has never happened.
That's just absurd.
Unheard of.
But what has happened is we know that because early and mail-in votes are about 60 to 70%, that those votes were counted prior to the polls closing, and they were released upon the polls closing, and so there's enough data to call Florida at this point. So Florida's.
Who just called it?
Yeah, they just called it.
Yeah, so Florida is
So
strong.
we were before everybody?
Yes.
There we go.
Woo!
Well, they were calling it. I have 8:01. We called it 8, so we beat the
There we
national
go.
folks by 1 minute. We'll see if we can go on the next one.
It is nice having the chairman giving us inside information a little bit, knowing
A
that
little bit of-
I think we're going to be up by 10%. So, I mean,
All right, not to
Yeah.
take away from that, but I want to make sure that Amber's question was answered.
So I thought I answered it.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
So our we don't have another guest until 8:25, and so what we thought we would do is kind of look at these. Chad, I think you had some congressional seats that you wanted to have people.
well, I think if we have time, I mean, Georgia's going to come in with some data. So there's a couple of counties that we really want to focus on, at least in Georgia. I think one interesting one is Columbia County, which is just outside of Augusta. If we can get the map over there. But if you look at Columbia, I mean, Trump won. If Biden shrunk. So in 2016, Columbia was all for Trump. Then Biden ate into the margin. So I'm very interested to see how Columbia County outside of Augusta does. You have Evans, you have Augusta. So that would be an interesting, if anybody's out home and wants to look at that. That is one county that is on the radar.
And you said Georgia.
In Georgia. Just north in Augusta.
See
But
if we can get it up
yeah,
on here.
let's see if there's any. Okay.
Oh, you do? Oh, there you go. Okay.
There's not anything.
Not anything? Okay, that's just something to keep out there. The county to the left of it, if you go there, if we have, what I did notice though on the screen, I did see data coming in from Virginia, which I didn't really love. I know Evan talked a little bit about Virginia. The early data out of Virginia doesn't look so good right now for the Republicans. I was expecting a little bit of a better showing, but it's still early. We do have New Hampshire, which early data coming in with New Hampshire. It's again not the best news so far, but there's still early. It seems like Harris is up by about 10,000 votes with a small lead, percentage-wise. And then the other counties that we want to look at in Georgia is that we have Gwinnett, Georgia on my mind. So if you're at Hall, so Hall is one of these mostly heavily Republican metro Atlanta counties. Trump won by a huge margin in 2020, but he won them by less than he did in 2016. So if you look at Hall, that's another county where if you want to see how Georgia's going, I'm pretty confident that the Republicans, so far the early data looks beaming, actually. But you have to pay attention to Gwinnett, Hall. Clayton is just outside of Atlanta, where, and this is interesting too, is it'd be a good test for Harris' ability to turn out the black voter in Clayton. Right now, it's about 73%, and Clayton is just south of Atlanta near the airport. So if there's any data coming in from Clayton, that'd be interesting to see. But there's a ton of data coming in as we get. And is there any more data coming in? See, I'm staring at my hedge bet.
I think we can turn off the Florida.
Yep.
Anything that's in Florida.
Okay.
And then let's go back over and
just
let's
trying
see
to
if
get rid of
we've
this
got
stuff.
anything from North Carolina. They're talking about Mecklenburg County up there, which is a big deal for Democrats.
So one interesting thing, Jamie, is I voted in about 5 different states. I voted in Virginia, I voted in North Carolina, I voted in Arizona, Florida, New York. So I got a handful of swing states underneath my pocket. So
Here's what we got going on here in Mecklenburg.
So Mecklenburg, if you're not familiar, Mecklenburg is Charlotte. And then you have a couple of counties outside of Charlotte that are also kind of bellwether out there.
So yeah, we've got so there's some early results coming in. Harris winning big in Mecklenburg with about 33,000 votes in. If you go back to the green tablet, so in North Carolina and Mecklenburg. So we're looking, yeah, that's a place where we're going to see about 750,000 votes. Mm-hmm. So that's a scratch of the surface. So there we are with, I see what you're looking at in Virginia.
Yeah.
But I also saw that in North Carolina, they showed, they have almost 2 million now reporting in Georgia, and Trump up by 250,000 votes. So that's trending in the right direction. Let's see.
And Georgia was leaning red, but it just depends how much it was leaning.
It's also important to know that, like in Georgia, there was no U.S. Senate race to drive money and turnout and enthusiasm. In North Carolina, there's no U.S. Senate race, but there was a governor's race, and the Republican governor is not going to bode well tonight. And so we'll have to see if that North Carolina gubernatorial race is indicative of, kind of is the anchor there. I think what we're probably, one of the things, this is kind of like the show Entourage, where it's like, oh, there's maybe not bad results, but a slow reporting process because of what's going on in Western North Carolina, and how initial results were that turnout in those Western North Carolina counties was extremely high, where Trump defeated Biden in 2020, but they may be having some issues with counting votes out there. I haven't really seen the
I
map
would say
yet.
that because of Helene and the storms that they have in the last, let's say, month, maybe they're just so pissed off with the FEMA and Biden's administration and Harris that they're saying, you know what, we're getting the hell or high water, we're voting. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens with the voter turnout on the western part. I mean, you have Lenore, you have Catawba, you have Montgomery, Washington, you have Scotland, all these counties in middle and western, Ashland out there. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I don't expect data to come in there yet.
Yeah, early election data, when Florida comes in, it includes the mail-in ballots and the early voting ballots. In these other states, it often it's going to be the early vote, which tends to, in a lot of states tends to go more Democratic. So
Just
we'll
watching
see
the
how it-
screen there, I'm slightly optimistic that Trump is eating into the Virginia lead. He was down by about 9 as the votes coming in. He's down by about 7. So that is somewhat encouraging. If he can hold, he's going to lose Virginia, but if he can come close to getting about 5 points close to Virginia, I think it's definitely an encouraging night for the Republican Party.
So can I ask a question? So, and for these are for people that don't know like me. So when it comes to, someone doesn't win by popularity vote, right? So they win by the electoral electoral
College,
vote.
yeah.
So they're right there. We're watching CNN right now, and it's saying that that Trump is winning.
90 votes to 27.
Right. So what does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
So
Is there per state? Is that per state?
Yeah, so those are the states that they've already called one way or the other, that there's, irrefutable data that that's where they're headed, right? And so, it becomes a high mathematical improbability that somebody would flip, if they were to flip Florida, for instance, right? And so, so now the question is, there's a group who are wanting to go to the popular vote and turn their back on the Electoral College. And, that's a horrible idea for a lot of reasons. But the number one reason is the way that our founding fathers set it up was the U.S. House was representative of the people and the U.S. Senate was representative of the states. Our founding fathers were very adamant that our federal government recognized both people and states. And about 100 years ago, we passed 17th Amendment, whatever, like if I've not really studied, but we went to direct election of U.S. senators. There was a slew of amendments, 4 or 5 constitutional amendments that happened in the early 20th century. And they were, one was we went to direct citizen election of U.S. senators. Prior to that, senators were elected in from their legislature. So you always elected a legislator to the U.S. Senate. It was, if you made it to the legislature, then if you wanted to be in the U.S. Senate, you were elected from another legislative body. But what that required then was that the person in the U.S. Senate was supportive of the state, right? Because they were elected from the state legislature. And now we have citizen elections of U.S. senators. I'm not sure it's a positive thing, but it's certainly not what the founding fathers intended. I don't know that it's positive or negative. I think we end up with, the split government. But what has happened because of this last 100 years is that the body politic or American psyche no longer really realizes the importance of states' rights. And so, and that's part of what we're seeing in the abortion, discussion. There's never been a federal right to abortion. There was a U.S. Supreme Court that overturned a law in Dallas, Texas, that restricted abortion, right? And so then it became like, okay, so Democrats or pro-choice folks had 50 years to pass a federal law making abortion federal law, but they never had the political will or votes to do it. So they always relied on the U.S. Supreme Court, and a lot of people view that Roe decision as a decision of women's rights, but it was truly a decision of states' rights. And the Dodd decision that overturned Roe was the U.S. Supreme Court reversing that wrong, that lack of recognition of states' rights. And so they decided that when it comes to abortion, that is a right that's specific to states, not to the federal government, until the federal government passes a law. And so it cannot be done, as Kamala Harris says, with an executive order. It would need to be done legislatively through the U.S. House and U.S. Senate.
Yeah. And I would go even a step further. I mean, you look at the Bill of Rights, and you look at what our rights are as Americans: right to free speech, right to bear arms. When you look at human rights, and this is where I think it doesn't quite, when a man wanted to marry a man and a woman wanted to marry a woman, the word marriage was brought up. And when I look at my, upbringing as a Catholic, not as, but also as an American, I said, you know what, that's a human right. That is a human right. And for a political reason, that needs to be a federal law. The states cannot sit there. That has to be a federal law. If you want to be married, then you're going to be married. As an American man, woman, you're going to be married. And I look at marriage as a basic human right. What's not a basic human right is abortion. So when it's not a basic human right, it gets thrown back down to the states. And then the communities and the states then get to vote on what they want to do with abortion. But it's not a federal, it's not a human right. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand about being an American. And then I'll kick it back to Electoral College. We are not one country. And I explain this because I have the liquor business, and I explain this anytime that people want to import or do business. You're not dealing with one country. You're dealing with 50 countries with 50 different laws. And that's why we're the United States of America. And if we didn't have the Electoral College, then we would just have New York and California dominating the entire country, and 90% of all landowners would be out of luck. So if we didn't preserve the Electoral College, then you're going to just fast forward to another civil war, because the entire middle of the country would be disenfranchised by the entire coastal regions and where the whole population centers are. Another interesting thing, too, is we haven't really talked about this, and why we have a minute is you look at illegal immigration. And if you look at illegal immigration, not only is it wrong and does it mess us up, it messes us up because if you look at who's getting Electoral College vote, California, New York, wherever the illegal immigrants are going, we as a census are actually looking them as part of our populace. Mm-hmm. And because they're part of the populace, that's part of the census, which means the more people you have in your state, according to the census, gets an extra vote. So even though they can't vote, they are kind of voting. And that's something that, again, needs to be corrected ASAP.
Well, aren't they voting anyway, just with state IDs, right? Isn't that what's happening? That they're in these states and voting.
Right. They'll get a state ID, a state driver's license. And in Florida, we've kind of stopped some of that. Chad and I are going to argue probably one point from both ends to the middle. I don't see marriage as a human right. What I do see marriage as is government intervention, and government's responsibility when it comes to marriage is basically the intervention comes when people decide to get divorced, and they can't come to an agreement when it comes to divorce, when it comes to either separating assets or raising children. And so that's government's responsibility when it comes to marriage. I love the fact that you said that there's human rights. I think human rights include not being enslaved, not to be trafficked across borders. Mm-hmm. Not to be sold into slavery or sex trafficking. Those are human rights, and marriage I don't think reaches that level. People try to say everything is this right. You have a right to education. Well, no, we as a
Why
people
wouldn't
decide
it reach
to
that
do
level?
That. What's that?
Why wouldn't it reach that level?
What, marriage?
Yeah.
Because it's not. I don't think that it's something that it's inherent into, because I think if you're saying it's a human right, it's saying that you should be married, right? And I think that takes it a step too far.
I don't think.
But
I think marriage, but I mean, again,
But I think
going back,
I think we're
yeah.
agreeing in principle that the government should be not involved in determining who gets married. Government should be involved in, regardless of what we call it. Government should be involved when people can't agree in a divorce.
But then, if it's a license, why can't it just be like my driver's license and it expires?
And you have to renew it.
No, I mean, marriage is the only contract that once you sign it, it's forever.
It's
the only
forever.
license. I mean, it's just like I got to renew my driver's, my hunting, my fishing. I got to renew all these license. Marriage, nah. Why don't we just make a 5 or 10 year? I mean, these are things that
That's actually not a horrible idea.
that's original thought.
No, I mean, really, and I mean, don't get scared or anything, but no, it's. I mean,
She's getting the 4-year itch, ladies and gentlemen.
no, it just. I mean, if you think about that, because then you literally have to sit down and have that conversation. Okay,
We're renewing our license.
our marriage is about to expire, and is this what we want to do?
And then just figure it out on your own.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
you got
figure
the
it out on your
kids,
own.
you just be like, okay, but I think that's a topic for maybe reasonable arguments down the line.
Yeah.
So, and what data do we have coming in right now?
I am just looking at some, so not enough there.
No.
I was looking Wake County, North Carolina. Let's look. Let's see here. if
What's
we
Pennsylvania doing? They have anything showing yet?
Well, it's my least favorite state when it comes to elections.
Can help me find the election where it says election results. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not. They're not very good websites.
sometimes they do not do great on.
So some of the counties that we have to pay attention if you're at home, you want to look at Wake, which is near Raleigh.
There it is,
Mecklenburg, which is in Charlotte. You have Union just outside of Charlotte. You have Robinson, which is very, very, very Trump without college degrees. So it's heavily white without college degrees. You have Henderson, where is also another one. But this is on the western part of the state that's been affected by Helene. And we call them boomerang states, which are states that have went for Trump in 2016, and then they went for Biden in 2020. So some of the counties that you want to look
I'm
for
looking
are
at-
Nash and New Hanover.
I'm looking at. I'm
Catawba?
just trying to look at what the some of the results are in. We're seeing North Carolina trending. It looks like it's trending towards Harris, right? And so I want to make sure that I'm looking at Cabarrus County, Cabarrus. Excuse me
Cabarrus.
if you're from there
Sorry.
and I'm mispronouncing it. But this is a Republican county, right? And so you're seeing a 1,200 vote lead with by Harris. So all they have in here are early votes. Or it would be my speculation. And you're looking at a county that has 120,000 total votes, and 6,000 are in.
Yeah,
So
no.
there's a long way to go in these counties, and in North Carolina.